and hopefully the fact that they are no longer a threat to anyone else.
Yeah, Dave, when you look at the police presence there, it's just tremendous. And we know that the feds have established very clear guidelines for how to respond to these kinds of situations. We know that they're probably calling in all or other off-duty officers or personnel who are not currently at an emergency call, trying to establish an incident command structure there. Have you seen, in comparison to other scenes, does it seem to you like this is probably one of the largest scenes that you've kind of encountered in terms of a barricaded situation, even though they're not using that term, a suspect who is inside of a home?
Yeah, this is unique in that there's like layers to it, right? So we're inside one of the perimeters, and there are perimeters set up at the mile roads to the north and south of where we're standing here on DeQuinder. So right on the borders, to give people a general idea if they're just tuning in, between Rochester and Shelby Township. So I'm standing on what is essentially Rochester area, and then across the street over there is Shelby Township. That's DeQuinder Estates. That's the mobile home park, very large mobile home park. So right here where I'm standing, yeah, I'm counting, a dozen or so law enforcement vehicles with their lights on now as the sun is setting down. It's become more and more evident, but there's probably a secondary scene within that. I know there is because I've seen, a number of SWAT or armored vehicles pull into the mobile home and then make a right. Theoretically going to the secondary scene, and who knows if there's a scene beyond that as well. So yes, very large. I'm sure it was all hands on deck, and I'm sure if you were off duty, you became on duty as soon as you got the call, just given the gravity of the situation of what transpired around 5 o'clock this afternoon. The fact that, innocent people seemingly were fired upon by random with no rhyme or reason as to why, and no rhyme or reason as to who this person is. And so once they found this person and tracked him to the scene, yes, you bet if you were anywhere near, you were flying to the scene if you were in law enforcement, trying to help out in any way, shape, or form. And then, yes, once they get here, it becomes a coordinated event, which goes on an enormous scale. I can't even begin to fathom how that is handled, but they've done this before. So this is handled professionally, and hopefully we'll get some idea of what brought it to a resolution tonight.
Right, and of course, because you're waiting for investigators to come give you an update, we are now just going through the process, because you have done this so often, of what law enforcement is likely doing right now, or what they may be in the process of doing, assessing the situation, gathering intelligence, trying to see if there are, any potential hostages. These are all the kinds of things that have been laid out by federal agencies for what even local law enforcement will do. SWAT obviously there until they know that suspected shooter is neutralized. However that occurs, of course, they always want to come to a peaceful resolution, but they will be there on scene until that person is neutralized. Any updates at all? Because we can't see the entire scope. We can only see where Timothy Robertson is pointing his camera. Have you seen a mass exodus of law enforcement, or any entrance of other? Go ahead. No, I was just going to say that, yes, correct. I've seen them come in. I have not seen many come out. Again, we're seeing a couple more just come onto the scene. That's kind of, they've been trickling in. I have not seen many law enforcement outside of that one SWAT vehicle, which left and then returned to the scene, go. And again, the sheriff is here on scene as well. Veiled all clear has been given. Clearly they are not standing down in any capacity at this point, so we don't know what prompted that. Obviously we don't know why this particular suspect may have chosen this location, if they're possibly working with somebody else. Who knows why they chose to barricade themselves in this particular location. So maybe these are all things that have to be ironed out before they go ahead and say everything is fine, everybody can resume normal activities, because that is clearly not the case. Not as we come to you at, what is it, 9:30 now. They're still trying to clearly find out something else. The sheriff walked in, I don't know, probably 30 minutes ago he arrived on scene, and has been, out of view, speaking with somebody, trying to gain as much intel as they can. The hope is that the sheriff will then return. This is where a perimeter is. There's
other media here. So it stands to reason that this is where he'll come to deliver kind of whatever message he has to give as we enter close to the 10 o'clock hour here.
Dave, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And look, as we come back here, just after 9:30, we do want to just give you a recap of Dave spoke to a person who was nearby, saw the lights, stopped by. Yep, no problem, man. A young man by the name of Logan Sherrill, obviously emotionally shaken at the thought of him possibly going to that splash pad before hearing that it was a crime scene. But he said that he had stopped at Willowwood and DeQuinder, where Dave has been for the last hour and a half. He had said that he saw SWAT, he saw helicopters. He got an alert about the splash pad situation on his phone, pulled over by that neighborhood for safety. Scene has gotten crazier since he had gotten there, and obviously since Dave had gotten there as well. And then Dave had asked, does he have any idea where this situation between the suspect and law enforcement has been happening? He had hinted at possibly the back right corner. Of course, that is not confirmed yet. We do know that Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard is on the scene, so hopefully they can provide Dave with an update, and we can kind of get a better idea of the lay of the land there, other than what you're seeing by the perimeter. But yeah, DeQuinder Estates, this young man had said that he instead decided to go to the pool instead of the splash pad, and that decision likely has saved him injury and saved his life.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in this area. Rochester Hills is known for being a very safe community there in Oakland County. And so I have to imagine that everyone who is associated with this is entirely shaken. We have to, obviously, put an emphasis on the 9 or 10 people in multiple hospitals in our area who are now recovering, hopefully recovering from gunshot wounds and what the sheriff, Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard, described as various injuries. There is a very specified protocol also that will be taken out there. The federal government, through the FBI, has laid out a very clear pathway for how investigators should engage with a suspect in this kind of circumstance, making sure they have a qualified negotiator. One of the reasons why, even though you may have seen earlier Sky Fox up, one of the reasons we keep our distance is because we don't want uniformed personnel, SWAT, those who may be in plain clothes, any equipment, etc., to be visible to the suspect, visible to the person who's inside. So we've been very, very careful about that. They have established, obviously, a full perimeter that is further away. As Dave said, this, because he's been on many scenes like this is a lot further than he usually is. So some of what we're getting is at least 1 or 2 steps removed. And likely that's because this is a very dangerous situation. Obviously, they don't want any kind of collateral damage in the neighbors who are around there. And they want to bring this, obviously, to some kind of peaceful resolution if possible. And we're still getting updates on that. But we know the Sheriff, Mike Bouchard, is a very involved investigator himself.
And look, he's been through this situation before.
He has.
He was through the situation with Oxford, and we saw what happened and how he responded. So, this is one of those where his guys and his officers, they're battle tested, and they know how to handle these situations. And we've seen them handle situations where they're having to try to negotiate with a suspect for a peaceful resolution. Might I also add that this has been a very busy 24 hours for Oakland County authorities, because earlier this morning, there was that shooting at a house party in Lathrop Village, which is also here in Oakland County. So since then, it has been, a lot of work for a lot of investigators, and their night is going to end with this situation in Rochester Hills. We have 9 people, possibly 10, that were shot at a splash pad, and now it is trickled into a neighborhood, DeQuinder Estates, which is not too far. But this has been, you go from one safe space to another. You're supposed to feel safe at a place like a splash pad. You're supposed to feel safe at a place, a neighborhood where you're home, where you live. But we did see some people that were allowed to leave. Dave was saying that there is a sense of urgency, but there's not a heightened sense of urgency. So that gives a little bit of encouragement as to, how this situation is unfolding.
And there are sort of almost concentric circles here because there's a scene within a scene. So he is on the perimeter of the perimeter.
Yep.
And likely what he was hearing from negotiators or whoever was speaking over a microphone or speaking to this suspect inside of this home, we don't know exactly what they said necessarily, right? He's hearing from a distance. So we're not seeing exactly what investigators are doing up close. I think I also want to take a broader perspective. When we had that press conference from Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard, he was flanked by the mayor of Rochester Hills. Yeah. He was flanked by Congressman John James, because this community, after this kind of heinous act, needs to heal. All these 9 or 10 victims, they're going to have to heal in the hospital. They're obviously, our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers, our focus should be on them. But the psychological terror that a community experiences when their veil of safety is lifted, it's impossible to quantify that. It's impossible to qualify it.
Yeah, you talk about the healing from the physical injuries is one thing.
Right.
But this is something that's going to stick with people, especially a lot of the youngest victim, who we were told is a child. This is going to stick with them likely for the rest of their life.
8 years old.
Yeah, and so this is something that they're going to have to deal with. You go to therapy. You're going to have, and it doesn't just affect the immediate shooting victims, but this also affects the family and the community as well, because you're going to have to deal with talking with people about being safe and allowing them to try to open up their lives again and be vulnerable, because for people who've been in these kind of situations, you kind of build up that wall, and you hate to see that. It's something that is so innocent as visiting a splash pad, but hopefully, Rochester Hills or Corwell will have something that is in place that will be able to help them, not just heal physically, but heal emotionally as well.
Well, also, there's been a consistent debate amongst lawmakers about how to handle gun violence and what to do with regards to stopping this kind of thing, or if you even can. Is it possible to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening, and getting to the heart of what kind of gun legislation can be effective, while also maintaining the right that citizens have to bear arms that our Second Amendment provides us. On May 3rd, this is a really interesting point, we saw actually a sharp decline in mass shooting events in the United States. It was 91 fewer deaths and 222 fewer injuries that were seen at the same time on May 3rd in 2000 compared to 2023 at the same time. And so we don't know what kind of trend we're seeing now, but of course locally, anecdotally, we've seen an uptick when things get warm. Right. We see, sadly, more gun violence.
Especially the last few weekends. Right. It is not just a Detroit issue. It is a suburb issue. It is also a problem throughout our country. And this is one of those situations right here that'll be a flashpoint for more national conversation on gun control.
Right. Yeah. It might be appropriate for us, if you are just joining us at 9:40, to talk about what we know so far. According to the Oakland County Sheriff, we know that they encountered an active shooter. We know that someone apparently got out of a vehicle and just started shooting at a splash pad. The call came in about 5:11 this afternoon. This was at the splash pad right on Auburn, just east of John R. Now, folks were told to stay away from that area. Obviously, now we know that people who had been sheltering in place at nearby parks, they were allowed to go home. So that obviously is something positive, but still, as far as we know, this other scene where the suspect is contained, it appears at this point that is still ongoing. The sheriff out there himself, and we don't know what the status is in relationship to that shooter or suspected shooter who is inside of a home.
Yeah, Dave has been out there for the better part of an hour, and he has been talking to people. He has been basically our eyes, and even though he's in a perimeter, and he was saying being kept a little further back than he would at a scene like this, he was able to hear what sounded like someone on SWAT on the speaker trying to talk to the suspect And as you were saying earlier, Sheriff Michael Bouchard has worded this very delicately.
Right.
He hasn't said that this is a barricaded situation, but he did say that the suspect is there. What we do not know about the suspect situation is where exactly he is in relation to where Dave is in the perimeter, because we know that this neighborhood, DeQuinder Estates, it stretches at least a mile,
right,
possibly more. There was a neighbor or a neighbor or whoever was in the area that Dave did speak to and was saying that it sounds like the action may be going on in one of the back ends of this neighborhood, but of course we have to wait on Mike Bouchard to officially confirm that.
Yeah. One thing we should also say is that part of the way that this came to the attention of law enforcement, of course, 911 calls were coming in almost immediately after the shooting, but there was a sergeant listening to basically some new technology that the Oakland County Sheriff's Office has said, and we've said it a number of times. They have a tremendous amount of experience. Mike Bouchard is very involved in national organizations that deal with the latest developments on policing. So they were able to get there in 2 minutes before the first call even came in. And we also know that they were able to recover a weapon very, very quickly here.
It was a 9mm, right? 9mm Glock.
That's right, a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. And the number of bullets possibly fired here, it's gut-wrenching. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even say. Yeah. 28 times this person.
More than 24 times that this person is shot. He reloaded multiple times, but police did recover some of those handguns. And as you saw when Sky Fox was over the immediate scene, there were a number of not shell casings, but evidence markers on the ground. When you see those evidence markers, and we've seen them, we've been to crime scenes before, but most times those are shell casings that are being recovered by forensics. We mentioned the witness that Dave spoke to earlier. We want to get to him right now.
I was. Luckily, God told me to just go to the pool. Just go to the pool, and you don't need to go to no splash pad and get shot up.
Have you been to that splash pad before?
I have, and
on a day like today, like it is a Saturday, it was a nice day. Yeah. Is it crowded typically, or?
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Right. But usually, it's not somewhere you go to get shot up at.
No.
Quick recap. I know that we were going to pull up some more information, but quick recap. So what Dave was talking to that witness about was he was going to go to the splash pad today. He got the alert on his phone after the shooting, and instead of going to the splash pad, he did go to the pool. So he was just thankful that he did not have to get caught in that situation. But obviously, as you see that as he's speaking with Dave, he is very shaken up at the idea of what could have happened.
Well, there are probably a lot of people there in that community who are thinking the same.
On a day like today, especially.
Especially. It's warm out, it's beautiful out. This is the middle of the day. This is an incredibly safe community. Or so we obviously believe, and it has historically been. Many people likely were on their way there and are getting the alerts on their phones or have gotten the alerts on their phones and thinking, thank God.
Right.
Thank God I didn't go to this park today.
Yeah, their lives have been forever changed.
And you never want to live in that kind of situation. And obviously there are a number of people, especially young people, who are going to have to recover not just physically from this, but emotionally, mentally. It might be a lifelong process. We have seen reaction from a number of lawmakers. We obviously saw Congressman John James out there.
He was right there by Mike Bouchard.
The mayor of Rochester Hills. We also got a statement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer that we'd like to share with you now. Governor Whitmer reacting on X saying, quote, "I am heartbroken to learn about the shooting in Rochester Hills. We are monitoring the situation as updates continue to come in and are in touch with local officials." Sadly, she's been here before.
Right. Twice. I mean, if you count Michigan State back in 2023, February 2023, and then before that, it was Oxford at the end of 2022. Right. Yeah. Wait.
Sometimes it's hard to keep track because sadly we've had so many. Sadly we've had so many. We also
21. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So November 2021 was Oxford. February 2023 was Michigan State.
Right. And we have to also note that all of these victims have gone to multiple hospitals.
Right.
It's our understanding that at least 4. And as you mentioned, sometimes victims take themselves to the
sometimes
hospital.
you have a situation where not everyone who may have been either grazed by a bullet or shot goes with the first responder.
Right.
Sometimes they will hop in a car and take themselves. And so right now we are saying 9, possibly 10. The number could go up depending on the amount of people who maybe check themselves into the hospital without paramedics and maybe, drove there themselves. We also do have a statement from Corwell. We want to get to that and bring that up for you real quick. It says, quote, "Our hearts are with those who were impacted by the shooting that occurred in Rochester Hills. We can confirm that our team is caring for some of the victims, but we are not releasing any additional information."
We just want to give you a brief update. It's 9:47 now. We've been on the air for a couple of hours.
Yes.
Talking about a tragedy that unfolded in Rochester Hills. Around 5:11 is when the call came in, and it appears that law enforcement were able to get to the scene within 2 minutes. Again, we have said at least 9 people injured, maybe 10 victims, many of them suffering from gunshot wounds. Varying types of injuries is what the Oakland County Sheriff said during his press conference. This person just got out of a vehicle and started shooting at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, a place where families were gathered, where young people were. A victim, we understand, as young as 8 years old, was shot. Now, we don't know the types of injuries, all of the types of injuries involved here. We don't know the severity of those injuries. Right. Certainly our thoughts and prayers are with all of the victims and their families, as many of them. Another element that we have to mention are family members who maybe are hearing through us,
right,
through notifications, oh my gosh, my dad had planned to be
right
at that splash pad with some friends, or was taking, my children there. I don't know what the status of things are. I can't reach them.
It's Father's Day weekend.
Yeah.
This is a time that a lot of people were probably going to head out there. It was a nice warm spring evening. And this is an opportunity, as you were saying, Hillary, this is an opportunity that if you're watching this and you're not too sure about your family member, check in on them. Give them a call. Send them a text. Just check in on them, check in on their well-being. And if you know that they're a person that visits this splash pad out there, just see how they're doing. Because even if they weren't there today, the fact that they have been there before or would go there on a day like today, it is jarring, especially in a neighborhood like Rochester Hills. But as you're looking now live, the scene has quickly turned to night. And this is where both Dave Spencer and Timothy Robertson have been, for the better part of an hour, hour and a half, almost 2 hours now. But the law enforcement presence continues to remain very significant, a very strong presence, a number of cars, and you see several of them are from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. But this is the perimeter where Dave and Timothy have been stationed so far. And then, a few yards, few dozen, maybe 100 yards from where they are is the entrance of the DeQuinder Estates, and that is where this situation has taken a turn, where police have, cornered a suspect in a home in that neighborhood, but they're trying to hopefully negotiate a peaceful end. We saw, 2 SWAT vehicles. As Dave was speaking to us, maybe about 20, 30 minutes ago, one of the SWAT vehicles had left, and that's the one Dave had said that he had first noticed when he got there, that had driven into the neighborhood. And then I know that as you were talking with Dave and I had hopped in here, there was a much larger SWAT truck that took a turn into the neighborhood. Likely that may be connected to when Dave was hearing someone over a loudspeaker trying to talk with a suspect.
Possibly coax them out,
yes,
but unclear, because he is a distance from that inner scene. And you can just think of this sort of as concentric circles, because there's the outer perimeter and then the perimeter inside, close to where this home is. The sheriff, we should note, was very clear not to say barricaded gunman
Yes.
situation, which is typically how we would describe this. It could be because the suspect, the person they believe is a suspect, dropped a handgun, apparently. Law enforcement did recover a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. We know that the sheriff's office also was trying to secure a search warrant to do some more evidence collecting, which of course is related to this. We just don't know in what way and where that searching was conducted and how it relates to obviously their interest in getting a peaceful resolution to this at this time. Now,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Something that we can always say too, because we're still waiting on the Oakland County Sheriff to brief us, to give us an update. We can tell you what the steps are because we've had so many of these situations, so many of these things that are similar to a barricaded gunman situation. Someone inside of a home they're trying to coax out, where they don't know if there's a person inside with the suspect. They don't know how many weapons are inside with the suspect. They're always going to be using a qualified negotiator. So likely who we heard over the loud phone was a negotiator who has done this before, who has talked with suspects before. Now, they're also likely not going to try to take any too aggressive actions right at the outset. I mean, that can change, but that's usually the first line of defense. I don't want to be too aggressive with this person. And the most important thing, and which is why we in the media have learned over time to be very careful with displaying the tactical movements and positioning of law enforcement. They want to make sure all uniformed personnel, all ranks, police vehicles, equipment, weapons, etc., should be kept out of the view of the barricaded person or the person who is inside. And that is very, very important. And of course, you can see they've established a perimeter, and we are being kept just on the edge of that at the DeQuinder Estates. This is right on the border, by the way, between Rochester and Shelby Township, about a mile from the original scene, as I believe what Dave told us.
Yeah, and as you were saying earlier, you know, for these first responders, this is also, they have families that they want to return home to too.
Of course.
And so that is why they're taking all this added precaution, extra caution. Dave did say that compared to scenes that he has been at before, there is a sense of urgency. And I know you see officers in the middle of the street closer to the entrance of DeQuinder Estates, but he said there's not that heightened sense of urgency. Of course, in a situation like this, police want to get this suspected gunman in custody as soon as possible before this person can try to injure someone else. Hillary, you'd mentioned that Sheriff Bouchard did not call this a barricade situation.
Right.
I did have a moment as you were explaining everything. Colorado State, they have Colorado State Police. They have what a barricaded situation is, and I'll read that definition for you. It is an incident where a person maintains a position of cover or concealment and ignores or resists law enforcement personnel, and it is reasonable to believe that the suspect is armed with a dangerous or deadly weapon. So those last few words are key, because as you were saying and as we have heard, Sheriff Bouchard has been very delicate in not addressing this as a barricaded situation. But again, in a barricaded situation, it is believed that the subject is armed with a dangerous or deadly weapon. We do know that police have recovered a weapon, the 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. But what we do not know is, in the home where this suspect is there another weapon? And if so, where would it be in the house? And I think as you're seeing this, seems like there's a couple people that are walking out of the entrance of DeQuinder Estates. They
look like civilians. It's difficult to tell from this vantage point, but it does appear that those appear to be civilians. And of course, there are law enforcement. We can see on the back, they're identified, several of them. It looks like about 5, and obviously the flashing lights there with the multiple Oakland County Sheriff's Office vehicles. It looks like there's an EMS just to the right of the screen behind. Now, inside the secondary perimeter, if you will, beyond where we have Dave stationed and Timothy Robertson, they're going to be looking at everything. They're going to be looking at possible stairwells, if this is 1 level or 2. They're going to be looking at any skylights, the possibility for the suspect to escape that way. They're going to be looking at any windows, any points of egress or ingress into the home. Some definition to describe this as a barricaded situation. I think probably the reason that the sheriff was very careful not to go to that level is we just don't know what the weapon situation is inside.
Yeah, at the time that he was speaking, maybe he wasn't 100% sure. They needed more intel. And so hopefully Sheriff Bouchard at some point this evening can address the media again and answer some more questions and give us an update. Because these kind of situations, Hillary, as you know, they can last for hours. Like this could last well past midnight.
And we'll be with you through it all. We're also seeing, you know, as we mentioned earlier, Congressman John James is out there flanking Sheriff Mike Bouchard along with the Rochester Hills mayor. Now we're seeing State Senator Michael Weber, who is a Rochester Hills resident, also issue a statement. He says, "I was heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting incident that shocked our community today. I am praying for the victims and their families. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our first responders, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the Rochester Police Department, and nearby paramedics who responded quickly. The greater Rochester area will remain a strong community, and we will support each other during this tragic time."
As you were saying that, we did see a police van pull up and kind of situate itself near the entrance, and it is backing up now. Where it will go may give us an indication of where this scene or that interior perimeter is. However, it is going to be very hard to see where that driver goes, where that van goes in this kind of situation, especially as we are in nightfall, as we approach 10 o'clock. And this has been a developing situation. We see a door open. This has been a developing situation from start until now, for about 5 hours, from the shooting at the splash pad to where we are now.
And something the incident commander also will be working on, again, just based on the fact that sadly we've had to deal with this kind of situation all across America and here in Michigan a number of times. They are going to be now possibly even contacting additional what they call contact teams that could be deployed. So at any point also federal agents could already be there, may be being deployed. We do have FBI agents who are here in Detroit. They have a command post here. And you know, part of this is also managing the public, because you don't want any kind of collateral damage. Any people who are there, it looks like we have Dave Spencer, who may have just gotten some additional information about what's going on. And we can see Dave turning around and looking behind him. Dave, what update do you have for us?
Just some observations that I've made since I've been here, just to kind of help let people know what's going on at this very moment. I think you guys have referenced the armored vehicle that just kind of moved into a position here. We watched that one had been on the scene for quite some time, and then we watched it kind of reverse into the position now, just to kind of give people an understanding of where we are. We're right at the entrance to the DeQuinder Estates. That's where all this effort is being focused. That's where this perimeter has been set up, keeping the public at bay to let the law enforcement do their jobs here. And we watched that vehicle kind of get into position, and then see some people kind of hanging around the rear of that vehicle. No indication that they're going to move in any further from where they are now. And again, as you guys have been pointing out, we're not quite sure how deep into the mobile home park the scene actually is, where they have this alleged suspect kind of kept, and are waiting for additional information on the status of if they are still negotiating with him, if they have any updates on his current condition, if he's in custody. All of those are still unknown at this time. You know, the sheriff has been on scene here. The sheriff, Mike Bouchard, arrived on scene probably about an hour ago, got out of his vehicle. He parked right next to where we are standing right here, walked across the street into the mobile home park, and has not been seen since that time. We don't know what, you know, I'm sure he's very hands-on in the negotiation factors, but to what degree, it's unknown until he comes back and kind of gives us an update. But yeah, it's been pretty static up until that point where that armored vehicle just kind of moved into position. We've seen some other kind of vehicles shift around, but nobody has really, there's not been a strong police presence influx, and there hasn't been any that have been leaving the scene either. Just kind of pretty static to that point, other than what we've seen. Again, this has been the scene for quite some time, a few hours now. I arrived here at 8 o'clock, and I know that some of the bystanders, we were one of the first media outlets here, some of the bystanders had been here close to an hour afterwards. Most of them living quite nearby, saw all the commotion going on right here on Willowwood off DeQuinder. It's just south of Hamlin, on the border of Rochester and Shelby Township, and just out of curiosity wanted to know what was going on. They had obviously, most of them, had heard about what took place just a mile down the road at the splash pad, where that gunman allegedly opened fire and injuring, or to some degree wounding, 9 to 10 people. To various degrees. So just a kind of a recap. This perimeter has been set up. The actual mobile home estate is very large in scope, dozens of units. We watched a few armored vehicles kind of pull in, turn to the right once they entered the neighborhood, and then a large crop of trees right there blocking any sort of further developments, any further movements from that point on, and that's the way it's kind of stayed up until the point where roughly an hour ago we heard one call over the loudspeaker. I couldn't quite make it out. Now, a person did tell me that we interviewed that they were telling somebody to come out. I cannot confirm that that was indeed the case. I heard them say something, and it stands to reason that that's likely what they were saying, as you watch a vehicle kind of leave the scene, and as we wait for further information to come out as to the status of any sort of negotiations, any sort of custody, or what's going on with this person that is somewhere likely in those DeQuinder Estates mobile home park. Back to you guys.
If we could ask you, Dave, because this is often what will happen, they'll literally send one member of law enforcement, or sometimes a team, to knock on the doors of nearby individuals to tell them to shelter in their homes. Do you know if they have done that in this area?
I did get one report just from again, we're not allowed to enter there, but somebody who has a relative that lives within that perimeter there that said that their neighbor, that's what happened to their neighbor, that they were told that they needed to leave. That this was few hours ago at this point, and since that time we have noticed a number of people. Now, they were coming from a different direction from where the SWAT vehicles came, but we've noticed some cars, some vehicles leaving the scene, presumably people that live over there in the DeQuinder Estates. They were allowed to leave. We haven't seen anyone just citizens being able to walk across the street and go to their resident. I don't know if anybody is still trying to do that at this point, but that has not been the case. We haven't even seen much of an effort of anyone to get inside there. I think they understand the situation. Nobody's looking to jeopardize anything, and so yeah, that's currently where we stand in terms of if everyone was asked to evacuate. I don't know the extent of which. Just that one report from anecdotally from a person that's just here standing with me on the perimeter.
Hey, Dave, I know you spoke to a witness earlier. We have seen people since then kind of walking near the entrance. I know that before we came to you moments ago, we did see two people kind of walk out of the entrance and then walk back in. You described this scene earlier as a sense of urgency, but maybe not a heightened sense of urgency. Has the mood changed since we last checked in with you?
No, minus the positioning of that armored vehicle that's right here at the entrance. That's the only thing that's really changed. In terms of the mannerisms of the law enforcement officers, not really. I haven't seen anyone kind of running towards any direction. They're walking with a purpose. Everybody here knows what's at stake, and they know the seriousness of this. So nobody's taking this any kind of lightly. But yes, they're not in a defensive position by any stretch of the imagination here. At least where I'm standing. Again, it's hard for me to tell from this vantage point, even as night has fallen and I can kind of look over and see if there's any, other police lights deep within the subdivision there. I can't tell. So I don't know what it's like closer to the scene, but at this point, from this perimeter, no, there's urgency, but not a heightened sense of that.
And you haven't seen DTE or Consumers Energy over there maybe to try to cut the power at all?
No, I have not seen any of that. As we speak now, another police vehicle is entering the scene here. But no, there's been no utility crews or anything to that effect. It's been all law enforcement. That's been the only one that's the only vehicles that are allowed to kind of breach the perimeter at this point. So, yeah, here we go. We see one of these vehicles that I mentioned earlier. Theoretically, just a person that lives within there being allowed to leave. So that is allowed to happen. Again, nobody's being allowed entry. But yes, the power is still on, presumably. I could see some lights just off into the distance that you would say that, yeah, reason to believe the power is still on at least.
And I understand this may not be a question that you can answer, but obviously law enforcement stages us in certain areas, usually for safety, sometimes it's to keep us out of the way. Did they tell you when they put you there outside of the DeQuinder Estates how far you are from the actual scene? Any kind of general concept of how close you may be or how deep inside the home is that's being targeted?
No, unfortunately, no. And that may just be because the people that are setting up the perimeter might not know. I mean, honestly, they have a job to do. They're concentrating on their job, letting the other law enforcement agents concentrate on theirs. Now, that being said, maybe an aerial view. I know we have Sky Foxes went to refuel and is now back up in the air. That might give us a better sense of where it is. I don't have a monitor out here, so I can't see where it's positioned right now. But that possibly could give us a little bit more detail. But from where I'm standing, it's nearly impossible for me to tell.
Yeah, and we understand that we're asking you, to answer questions that I know you haven't had a chance to interface with law enforcement. Obviously, Mike Bouchard is there working the scene. He is a seasoned investigator himself, although they will be using, of course, trained negotiators who can deal with the suspect. Any update maybe on when we might hear from the sheriff or someone from the sheriff's office?
No, yeah, they haven't given us, as soon as he arrived, he paid no notice to us, as you wouldn't think he would, and went directly into the scene and to kind of gather whatever intel he could. And that's the last we saw of him. It's hard to tell now that night has fallen, outside of these flashing lights, anything really that's going on beyond this perimeter. So it's anyone's guess when that sheriff or Sheriff Mike Bouchard will come back and hopefully provide us an update relatively soon.
Dave, we do appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
I think I see him now, actually.
Okay.
I think I see him now. So hopefully we'll get that update relatively soon. We'll see where he goes. It looks like he's getting back into his vehicle. Let's see if we could get him.
Yeah.
So as you're watching this, Dave Spencer is at the DeQuinder Estates.
Office.
Trying to catch up with Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard.
Yeah, he is approaching Oakland County Sheriff.
11 at the
Bouchard.
office, he said. I think.
Right
Thank you
now.
very much, Sheriff. That the suspect is. Now I don't want to say it because I didn't hear for certain, but he might have an update for us. He said at 11 o'clock at the sheriff's office.
Is when you're expecting that you'll get an update on exactly what happened here.
Correct.
Okay.
That's when he just left the scene and is theoretically going to give us an update in about a little less than an hour from now as to what he has learned here. This still remains unchanged outside of the fact that the sheriff's no longer here. So yeah, hopefully we'll get that update soon.
I'm going to let you go so you can kind of maybe touch base with maybe public information officers who might be able to confirm some of what I believe I also may have heard kind of in the distance there, which we don't want to say anything that's not confirmed at this stage. But if we could just ask, we saw what looked like some civilians leaving. Now, they look to be almost like one maybe in a bathrobe. Have you seen civilians coming from the DeQuinder Estates?
Yeah, I've seen them leaving from there, but not entering too many, or at least not on vehicles. I mean, maybe they're walking across with permission. But yeah, there's vehicles leaving here, but not. They're all just regular people seemingly that live there. I haven't seen any. The police any of those armored vehicles leave quite yet. It's quite possible that they have a scene to process still, but the fact that the sheriff is no longer here, people can draw some reasonable conclusions from that. I don't want to speculate anything that I can't confirm. I think he did say something, but I hesitant to say what it was just because I didn't hear it with my own ears.
Well, like you said, we'll wait until 11 o'clock, Oakland County Sheriff's Office, where they will have a news conference, hopefully give us an update and confirm what has happened. So that was Dave Spencer reporting live from DeQuinder Estates, where there was a situation where the suspected gunman, who is accused of shooting 9, possibly 10 people over at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, was cornered by SWAT and by authorities, and they were trying to reach a more peaceful resolution to this.
And to be clear, from what we understand, the words that the Oakland County Sheriff used in that previous press conference was contained in, and specifically inside of a home. And at that time, and this has been now almost 2.5 hours ago, the sheriff was saying they weren't sure if there were any weapons inside of the home. They weren't even sure at that point if there was another person or people inside of the home with this particular suspect, accused again of possibly injuring 9 or 10 people, many of them suffering gunshot wounds. The sheriff again saying that there were various injuries.
It happened over at the Rochester Hills splash pad earlier today. So the call came in around 5 o'clock. Sheriff's office or investigators used some new technology to help them out and try to get to the scene within minutes. They recovered a 9mm handgun, and they also recovered 3 empty magazines. Now, the investigators have said that the suspect appears to have fired 28 times in a crowd of people, and we know that there are at least 9, possibly 10 victims here, and one of them is as young as 8 years old.
As young as 8 years old.
So imagine this is a nice, warm weekend. People will go to the splash pad. This is Father's Day weekend, and they're having to deal with a tragedy like this. The victims have experienced all kinds of injuries. So varying injuries. We haven't got an idea of what those injuries are or to what extent. We do know that a team at Corewell Health is helping out.
We know that.
Some of these victims, they've been to 4 different hospitals.
At least
4 different hospitals at this moment. And but getting back to the shooting here, authorities did say that the suspect had hopped out of the car and just started shooting. Had no relation, as it appears of now, had no relation to any of the victims who were at that splash pad. And then it trickled down to that suspect being contained in a home at DeQuinder Estates, where you saw Dave Spencer. And now we're expecting an update in the next 45 minutes from Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard. Camila Miri has been at the splash pad scene, so she was updating us when this initial shooting happened, and then Dave has been with us on the back end as they have been talking about trying to de-escalate this contained situation.
Yeah, and the other thing we can say too is that the phrase that the Oakland County Sheriff used was that this was incredibly random, very random. So as of now, it doesn't look like there's any relationship between the shooter and the victims. It's very difficult at this point to necessarily pin down exactly what kind of injuries everybody has. But of course, multiple people are suffering from gunshot wounds, and there are various injuries, as we said. Now, we know also regarding that contained suspect inside of a home, the Oakland County Sheriff not only gave the update that he's going to be giving some kind of press conference to us at 11 o'clock at the sheriff's office, but he also left the scene, according to Dave, who was there at the DeQuinder Estates, where we believe that suspect had been contained within a home. Now, we also want to mention that if you were sheltering in place, many people have known for a long time, but in case they didn't get the message, we don't want to assume. If you were sheltering in place near the park, which was on Auburn Road east of John R., you are able to leave. We never want to assume that someone who may have been without their phone, or maybe the power went out on their phone or whatever, they're just learning what's going on here. If you were sheltering in place near Auburn Road east of John R., it is safe for you to leave, but please do avoid that area. That is where the splash pad is located. This is where still at this hour, I'm certain law enforcement are still collecting evidence, which is such an important
and it will
critical
likely
piece of
be a
this.
crime scene, not just at the end of the day today, but tomorrow and in the days to come for this week. That scene, that splash pad, will likely remain a crime scene, just as the scene over at DeQuinder Estates, wherever they are in that perimeter, will be a part of this crime scene as well.
And we saw SWAT on scene. We saw armored vehicles, of course, on scene. And the sheriff didn't give us very much detail about the search warrant that he was trying to secure. But I suspect because that original press conference happened around 7:40 p.m. and we're now approaching 10:20 at night, very likely that search warrant was acquired. That may have provided additional evidence, information that allowed them to deal with this suspect. Of course, we are hoping that there was a peaceful resolution here, but unclear what happened in that regard. Some of the process for this, by the way, we know is established, sadly well established, because we have had so many mass shootings in this country. So there is a protocol. Obviously, they established two perimeters there, an external perimeter and an internal perimeter. Where we saw Dave, that was the external perimeter, where we could kind of hear in the distance what was going on. Really, that 11 o'clock press conference is going to be the thing that gives us more concrete information about maybe even what the results of that search warrant were, and more about what happened. Another thing we want to note, the sad part of how young some of these children were, at least one child 8 years old.
And you have to imagine at a splash pad, there likely would have been more children there.
Right. As awful and as terrible as this is, it's very possible that that was a very, very populated area where more people could have been injured, even more than possibly 10.
The witness that Dave spoke to outside of DeQuinder Estates had even said that during this time of year, that area, that splash pad, is very popular. And that witness had even said that for a moment he thought about going to the splash pad today, but he said that God told him to go to the pool. And he got the update about the shooting over his phone, and he was grateful that he did not go to the splash pad. This is something that will definitely have a lot of effect, not just on the immediate victims, but their families and this Rochester Hills community. I know that you're from this area, and I think for a lot of people who are just catching up to us and may not be as familiar with Rochester Hills, can you describe the neighborhood and that community in that area for us?
We have a lot of people who are from that general area of Oakland County, and it is an incredibly safe community. You know, right there at that splash pad, right at Auburn, just east of John R. This is a place where people can walk to and from. This is a place where people do walk to and from. And as we know historically, it's not a secret to anyone. We don't really cover very often shootings in Rochester Hills. In fact, in the years that I've been here, I can't ever remember covering a multiple shooting or a mass shooting in Rochester Hills, ever. So this is reverberating throughout that community right now. Where we see, and we're being very careful about what we're saying on social media and what folks are, how they're responding and what they're saying about what they encountered. We don't want to release any of that information until we're able to check with the primary sources, right? But we are seeing, you know, a lot of people just expressing how gut-wrenching this is for them as community members. And the thing about a community like Rochester Hills, and really many communities in Metro Detroit, they are tight-knit. So even if someone doesn't have a family member there, or if they're hoping that their loved one is recovering in the hospital, their neighbors are praying. Their neighbors are hoping. Their neighbors are concerned. This is that kind of community. I mean, and it is a very Michigan way. We come together and we embrace our neighbors, and their pain is all of our pain.
Unfortunately, between Oxford and Michigan State in this, it has happened too many times. We do want to give you an update, and we have heard that, again, this is a very fluid situation, so we did hear that now the shooting victims, there's 8 shooting victims that we have heard. So initially we had heard 9, possibly 10. Now we have a number that is eight shooting victims. So we hope to, in the next 40 minutes, Dave Spencer is going to go to the Oakland County Sheriff's office, and we're going to hear from Sheriff Mike Bouchard after a very, very busy day for the sheriff, for his crews, and we're going to get an update on the situation about the Rochester Hills shooting. One thing I did want to mention, and you mentioned social media,
right?
And that has been something that has been kind of a thorn in the side of law enforcement, because as they are trying to get the right information out, and I know we saw this during Michigan State, there are people who may hear things, and I know you had hinted at this, moments ago. They hear things on social media, so then they'll put it on social media, and then it travels fast.
Right. It moves like wildfire.
Right.
Sometimes.
And then law enforcement is not only trying to de-escalate an active situation, but they're trying to de-escalate what is being said on social media so people don't get more anxious or fearful of what is unfolding.
Well, a few things to note about that. So, number one, while it can be very problematic for law enforcement to control the accurate information, we just saw a very big update in this case, right?
Yes.
So we heard out of the sheriff's mouth that 9 or 10 people might have been wounded. Now, the reason that we've also been very careful about saying they've been injured is because the sheriff said we don't know necessarily what all of the injuries are, right? So in a situation where you're in a public space, people are literally running for their lives, someone can trip, someone can maybe run into something. They can fall or have a puncture wound that may mirror a gunshot wound. So we're being very careful about that. And they have multiple scenes and also multiple hospitals that they're dealing with, checking in with those victims to see if they were in fact there because of this. But we can update you. 8 people, according to the new information we're getting, 8 people confirmed shot. The other thing I'll say about social media, it is a double-edged sword. Because a lot of the very good new information we were getting when the shelter in place was lifted, for example, that came through social media, right? Oakland County Sheriff, when he was talking about this suspect who was contained inside of a home, that was relayed through social media. So it is a double-edged sword. You have citizens who are reacting, who are putting information out there, who are saying what they're seeing, and we're getting some of these chilling stories that are coming in, firsthand accounts. But then at the same time, it allows law enforcement to be able to inform not just the public, but us, so that we can relay that information because they're working in multiple places. I actually just texted the undersheriff asking if he could maybe come on and do a quick interview with us, and he is just reiterating that they have the 11 p.m. press conference at the sheriff's office, and so that they're basically indicating to us that they're going to be focusing all their efforts on updates at 11 o'clock, and that's likely when we'll know more.
You mentioned social media. We do have a statement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer that was posted on X earlier this evening. If we can bring that up for you, we'll read that to you. The governor says that, quote, "I am heartbroken to learn about the shooting in Rochester Hills. We are monitoring the situation as updates continue to come in and are in touch with local officials." And again, this is a situation that is unfortunately all too familiar for the governor's office, as well as the Oakland County Sheriff's office, because they've had to deal with, the governor was in touch with the community of Oxford and helping them heal from that situation. And she was also in touch with the community at Michigan State and trying to help them heal as well. We do also have a statement from Corwell, and we just want to bring that to you as we are updating you that 8 people are shot. Can we get that Corwell statement up for us, for our viewers, please? That we're doing that. Corwell is helping out with the situation.
Let's take this one. This one is from State Senator, and I think they've advanced it, but that's okay. State Senator Michael Weber of Rochester Hills, there we have it. "I was heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting incident that shocked our community today. I am praying for the victims and their families. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our first responders, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the Rochester Police Department, and nearby paramedics who responded quickly. The greater Rochester area will remain a strong community, and we will support each other during this tragic time."
It's like you said, Hillary, in times like this, we see the community come together. And this is that Corwell Health Statement, quote, "Our hearts are with those who were impacted by the shooting that occurred in Rochester Hills. We can confirm that our team is caring for some of those victims." And again, we have learned that 8 people were shot. But that was basically all that they were going to say, is that they have teams that are helping out those victims. But getting back to State Senator Weber's statement, and it pairs along with what you were saying, that in a tragic situation like this, communities in Michigan always find a way to come together.
Absolutely.
And support each other. And not only did you hear from Governor Whitmer, but State Senator Weber, we saw Congressman John James, who was right next to Mike Bouchard, the sheriff, as Bouchard was giving his initial address following the shooting at the splash pad.
Along with the mayor of Rochester Hills as well. So all of these officials obviously showing support together by banding together. That is a very strong visual cue to the people who are watching, knowing that no matter what agency, no matter what area of government you come from, they're working in collaboration. But, you know, we have to talk about the difficult part of this as well, which is that Congress has continued, state lawmakers have continued to grapple with what to do about gun violence. How far is too far in preserving Second Amendment rights, but also seeing if there is something more we can do to prevent gun tragedies like this, especially mass shootings, which we've seen. And as I was basically referencing a little while ago, we saw in May, at the top of May, that mass shootings actually were down in this country in terms of the number of fatalities, in terms of the number of injuries as a result of being shot in a mass shooting situation. And yet we don't know what those numbers will look like. And usually there is something of a lag, but we know that as the summer months approach,
which we are heading into now.
Right, as the temperatures get warmer, we have seen in certain quote-unquote hotspots, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, for example, a slightly different issue, but trying to focus on dealing with gun violence and violent felons who may be repeat offenders. And we don't know what the circumstances here. All we know in this particular case is that somebody who was not associated, allegedly, with these victims, with this situation, just pulled up, got out of a vehicle, and started firing his weapon, firing at least 28 times, and according to the sheriff, reloading.
And as a result, 8 victims were shot, including one as young as 8 years old. And we hope to, again, get another update from Sheriff Mike Bouchard in about 30 minutes from now. We have Dave Spencer, who was at the scene at DeQuinder Estates, where there was a containment situation involving that suspect. Camila Miri was on the scene. Okay.
We're just getting breaking news that the suspected shooter is dead. Again, we are just getting breaking news right now. You're looking at live images from Sky Fox. The shooter, we can confirm, has died. We have gotten, at this point, no additional information about the circumstances surrounding the suspected shooter's death. However, we can confirm the suspected shooter is dead.
And as you're looking right now live from Sky Fox, we're getting a closer look at where the interior perimeter was with the SWAT. You can see the SWAT vehicle. If you're looking at the top of your screen, you see a SWAT member getting out of that vehicle, but they are on either end of a house, and you can see, we can't tell you which one it is yet, but you see a couple houses over there. That SWAT vehicle is moving. But as we were able to tell you in the past 2 minutes, that the shooter of the Rochester Hills splash pad is dead.
The suspected shooter is dead.
Excuse me.
That is correct. And it's something to note, too, from Sky Fox, and again, the reason why we haven't gone to this asset until we now know that basically this has concluded, this what was an ongoing situation, is because we didn't want to at all give away where law enforcement were, what their tactical plans were. And so now we're able to give you this shot. And something that's notable, Brandon, as you look there is no one on the street, right? People are likely in their homes. Dave confirmed to us that some civilians had left. Now, it is also true that in these kind of circumstances, law enforcement can't compel neighboring people to leave their homes. They can't do that. So usually they go door to door, they knock, they tell folks what's happening or give them a basic understanding and tell them to stay in their homes. and everyone appears to be abiding by that. And I'm sure that probably helped law enforcement in bringing this to some kind of closure. Again, we don't know how the suspected shooter died. That has not been given to us at this point, but we can confirm the suspected shooter is dead. We expect an update according to the Oakland County Sheriff.
Yes.
At 11 o'clock, the undersheriff also confirmed to me that there will be an 11 p.m. press conference at the sheriff's office, and we do believe that Dave Spencer is heading there, and he's been following this very closely. He'll give us an update. It should give us more information about the circumstances surrounding the death of this suspected shooter, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, a much quieter scene. And when we came to Dave, the last time we came to Dave before he went over to the Oakland County Sheriff's office, he was trying to walk up to Sheriff Mike Bouchard and ask a question. And at that time, the sheriff said, "Hey, we got this news conference."
All right. Well, we're going to now go to a break. We expect to be back for you on air. But for now, we can confirm a suspected shooter in this standoff is now dead after 8 people were shot in Rochester Hills at a splash pad. We'll have much more coming up after a break. begin with breaking news, another mass shooting, and this one hits very close to home. 8 people have been shot in Rochester Hills. This happened shortly after 5 p.m. Adults and children were gathered at a splash pad on a warm, beautiful, sunny day.
This has been unfolding for the past 5 hours, and we want to welcome people who are just now tuning in. But again, 8 people shot that we were able to confirm. The suspected shooter, according to the sheriff's office, is dead. We are waiting for a news conference to happen around in the next 20-25 minutes or so. But from what we were told, this happened just after 5 o'clock. And the investigators were able to use some new technology to get to the scene, that splash pad, within minutes. But what we were told was the suspected shooter drove up to the splash pad, had no relation with any of the victims who were there, and got out of the car and just started firing, and fired 28 times. And we were told that the victims went to at least 4 of those hospitals, and that's kind of where we have ended up now.
Yeah, and we also know that the injuries that we're talking about here are varied according to the Oakland County Sheriff. We expect an update in about 20 minutes. We do understand that we have Fox 2's Camille Amiri. She was one of the first on the scene. You've been working this story for hours now. Camille, what can you tell us about the status of the investigation? It looks like we're having just a little bit of trouble with Camille's audio there. So just to give you additional information about what we know, a pistol was recovered. We know that happened along with magazines as well. We also know that this is led by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. And we're just getting information because all of this is breaking, so bear with us. We've just gotten information that Dave Spencer is on his way to the press conference. We know it's expected to start at 11 tonight.
Yes.
He is on the phone. We believe we have him. Dave, if you can hear us, tell us what you know, or if you've been able to confirm anything with the public information officers ahead of this 11 o'clock press conference.
Yeah, so I was able to confirm that through sources that the suspect is indeed dead at this point. As of what led up to that, I cannot say. I hope to learn more as soon as I arrive at the sheriff's office for the 11 p.m. news conference. I'm currently en route. We left a scene that was quite a scene over on DeQuinder Estates outside of that mobile home park where the perimeter had been set up for hours. Then they moved in, set an additional perimeter inside those mobile home estates, which is a sprawling area. And that's when the sheriff arrived, say, at about 8:30, went into the scene, came out an hour later, mentioned the fact that he was going to have a news conference at 11 o'clock. So we got in our car. I drove separate from my photographer. So that's where we are right now. I'm about 6 minutes away from pulling into the parking lot, and then 15 minutes away from hopefully learning the details of what transpired this afternoon.
Dave, while we have you on the phone, can you kind of recap for us where you were, where you started out at DeQuinder Estates to where you are now?
Sure, yes. I'm making my way towards the sheriff's central office on North Telegraph. Where this all took place was just south of Hamlin on DeQuinder Road. It's called DeQuinder Estates. It's a mobile home estate. That is where allegedly the suspect went a mile away from the splash pad and somehow was able to elude officers for some time until they were able to box him in. And that's the details we hope to gain when we reach the sheriff's office and he gives us our news conference. That would say around 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock is when we arrived. It likely happened right after the shooting. The suspect made his way there, and police worked to set up that barricade that I mentioned.
All right, thank you, Dave. We appreciate that, and I know that you'll have much more from the Oakland County Sheriff once we get it. We can also say, just to give you kind of some finality on that recap, the law enforcement who were there did recover a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun. We know that, again, the suspected shooter is dead. That is according to sources. We're going to have a full update coming at 11 o'clock. Now, we want to bring you what leaders from all across Michigan are saying. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who's been here before reacting to this mass shooting, she released the following statement earlier tonight. She said, quote, "I am heartbroken to learn about the shooting in Rochester Hills. We are monitoring the situation as updates continue to come in, and we are in touch with local officials," end quote.
And this is from State Senator Michael Weber of Rochester Hills. He says, quote, "I was heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting incident that shocked our community today. I am praying for the victims and their families. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our first responders, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the Rochester Police Department, and nearby paramedics who responded quickly. The greater Rochester area will remain a strong community, and we will support each other during this tragic time."
Corewell Health also released a statement on all of this that happened, this tragedy. It says, quote, "Our hearts are with those who were impacted by the shooting that occurred in Rochester Hills. We can confirm our team is caring for some of the victims, but we are not releasing any additional information at this time," end quote. All right, we're going to turn now to weather. Certainly, it was a beautiful day out there, and that's why there were so many people who were there at that splash pad. Young children, families, adults, etc. We're going to get an update on our weather from meteorologist, our weather authority, Stephanie Mead. Hi, Stephanie.
For sure, yeah. So today was a nice feeling day. Temperatures were in the upper 70s. We topped out at 79 degrees this afternoon, just shy of the average high of 80 degrees. The record at 95 set back in 1988. Now, I think we're going to see more numbers in terms of those records over the next several days because we are anticipating some unusual June warmth here moving into the state. And that happens as early as Monday. Luckily for Father's Day, we are getting a little warmer, but our temperatures will be just below that 90-degree threshold. Right now, we're at 69 degrees, 73 in Fort Wayne, 79 in Chicago for right now. Numbers still in the upper 70s to near 80 degrees out near western Illinois and the Plains states. Again, that heat headed in our direction. Showers in western parts of the state, little bit of light returns a bit closer to, say, the Saginaw area, but that is steering clear of us. And as we get through the overnight, there might be a few more clouds, but we are precip free overnight and into the day tomorrow. Temperatures will bottom out in the upper 50s. We're anticipating in the at least daytime highs in the upper 80s tomorrow and then upper 90s Monday into Tuesday. We'll toss it back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And as we were saying, the Oakland County Sheriff, Mike Bouchard, is expected to give us an update in just about 15 minutes or so. But he gave a press conference basically to the media around 7:40 this evening, telling us exactly how this went down. Sadly, someone just pulling up in a vehicle, opening fire into a group of people at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, right on Auburn Road, just east of John R. And now we want to hear from Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard from that previous press conference when he was just totally emotionally affected, you could tell,
yes,
by this tragedy.
Yeah, this was a nice day that really took a tragic turn.
Went up to the steps, opened fire. It looks like he reloaded, maybe possibly as he was ascending the steps. We have recovered a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun and 3 empty magazines. So preliminarily, it looks like the suspect fired potentially 28 times, reloading multiple times. We have recovered the handgun and the magazines.
So that's Sheriff Mike Bouchard. And we expect to hear from him again in the next 15 minutes at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. That is where Dave Spencer is.
And now we're going to go to someone who was actually one of the first on the scene right there at Spencer Park on Auburn, just east of John R. You've been following this all night, Camille, right there when it broke at 5:11. What can you tell us about the status of the investigation now?
Well, we did talk to a witness a short time ago, and we're going to be able to turn that sound around for you in a little bit. But he this is an unbelievable story. He was hanging out outside and at his house, which is nearby, and someone drove by and yelled out the window to him that there was a mass shooting at the splash pad. So he jumped in his car. He has a first aid kit in his car. So he's not a trained professional, but he was literally the first person on the scene and started rendering first aid. doing tourniquets, trying to stop the bleeding. He said that, there was a lot of blood. He said it's a kind of a blur for him, but he would just remember trying to help people, trying to get them to calm down, trying to get them to lay down. He said there were people screaming, and he said he just went into action until the EMTs came, and then he said, of course, he let them take over because they're the trained professionals. But he has quite a story to tell, and I know we're going to be sharing that personally with you when we're able to get that back into the studio. In the meantime, though, as you said, Sheriff Bouchard absolutely devastated. Of course, Congressman John James with him, and the mayor of Rochester Hills. Take a listen to what they said earlier tonight.
Went up to the steps, opened fire. It looks like he reloaded, maybe possibly as he was ascending the steps.
From how far away would you say? Hard to tell.
Probably 20 feet. It appears to be a random active shooter.
I can only imagine what it's like to arrive on a scene like this, and certainly complete thoughts with the families right now. This is a great community, and it's heartbreaking to see this happen here.
Under no circumstance in this country, particularly in Rochester Hills, should fathers be spending Father's Day in a hospital. This is an American epidemic that we need to fix. Gun violence needs to stop, and we are now most recently hit hardest by it.
And back live here, we're a little bit of a way, but you can see still an active crime scene right now. Police will be here for hours and hours. They've actually brought in the Salvation Army truck, which provides food, because that's how long. I mean, they've already been here since 5 o'clock. We'll probably be here definitely into the night as we go on and into the morning hours processing this crime scene. We know that the shooter did drop his gun, and we know that they've recovered that obviously at the scene, and at least 28 rounds of ammunition, shell casings everywhere. Like I said, processing the scene, making sure that all their I's are dotted, their T's are crossed. Again, though, that shooter confirmed that he is dead. For now, we're live in Rochester Hills. Camille Amiri, Fox 2 News.
And Camille, we've talked about it throughout the evening. You've covered a number of these kind of mass shootings, which is obviously sad. We saw a show of support, a congressman, the mayor, the sheriff, all working in collaboration here to do what they need. Obviously, there is the toll, the emotional toll on the people who are involved, but this affects the entire community. What have you heard from folks who are tangentially related to this?
Yeah, well, the witness that I spoke with, he said that he actually knew some of the people because this is kind of a tight-knit community in this particular part of Rochester Hills, and he's lived here all his life. He said there was a grandfather that had been shot several times in the stomach, and he knew him. He knows him, I should say. All the people still alive right now, as far as we know. But, some of the people, the bystanders that just came by, I mean, they were visibly distraught. A newspaper reporter asked a man and woman if they were okay, and they just kept shaking their heads, and they just kept saying, we know some of the people who are here. We know some of the people who were shot. How did this happen? How does this happen here? And the sad reality of it is that it can happen anywhere. We know that, and to see it hit so close to home again in Oakland County, we're still talking about Oxford. We're still thinking about Oxford. That school shooting, now this. We pray that no one here dies, but again, we know 8 people shot, some of them children and some of them in critical condition. It's a lot to process, it really is, and I know we'll be talking about this in the days and the weeks and the months to come, and now that shooter is no longer here, we will have so many questions that we're never going to get answered, that we're never going to know why. Why did he pick this place? Why today? Why? So many people on social media have talked about how he was just so calm, and he just walked up and just started shooting and then got in his car and then left. A lot to unpack here. Hillary, back to you.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, the emotional toll for the people who are involved. But you have to think also about the first responders. You have to think about the lawmen and women who were out there, who are thinking of their own children tonight. You have to think about the doctors and the medical professionals who are likely trying to save lives. So all of that affecting not just them, but you too, out there on the scene, having to talk to people who saw this firsthand. All of us are in this together, and we're praying for those victims. Thank you, Camille Amiri, live for us tonight.
And to follow Camille's update, we did get an update from Fox 2's Jessica Dupnack, and her sources are saying that the suspected gunman died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the initial reports are that The suspected gunman lived at that home with a family member. Of course, we're going to, in about 9 minutes from now, get an update from Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard at a news conference at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Dave Spencer is there, but we are continuing to follow major breaking news in Rochester Hills on what was supposed to be a nice, warm Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Father's Day weekend. 8 people shot at a splash pad. We will bring you more of our live coverage after this quick break.
I want to give you just a quick update. Here's what we know so far. This incident happened just after 5 this afternoon. Deputies say the suspect fired at least 28 shots in what appears to be a random act, according to the sheriff, reloading and shooting again. The suspected shooter is now dead. According to Fox 2's Jessica Dubnack sources, she has been able to confirm that he was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, found dead in a mobile home that is believed to be where he lived with a family member. The victims were taken to at least 4 different hospitals. Shelter in place has been lifted.
Yeah, and our own Dave Spencer is on his way to that press conference at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, which starts in about 5 minutes from now.
But earlier tonight, he talked to people who were going to the splash pad. They decided not to do that, and they are thanking God tonight that they didn't. Take a listen.
I was. Luckily, God told me to just go to the pool. Just go to the pool, and you don't need to go to no splash pad and get shot up.
Have you been to that splash pad before?
I have, and
on a day like today, like it is a Saturday, it was a nice day.
Yeah.
Is it crowded typically, or?
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
Right.
But usually, it's not somewhere you go to get shot up at.
No.
We're going to break things up a little bit. We're going to talk about weather, bring a little bit of levity to this very tragic evening. We're going to head on over to Stephanie.
Yep, to Stephanie. Give us an update on the weather. It was certainly beautiful out there today.
It was, yeah. It was real nice. Temperatures were in the upper 70s. We were a degree off from the seasonal high, which is around 80 degrees. And right now we're situated in the upper 60s. So it feels comfy outside. It feels nice. There are a few locations still in the